What's happening, everybody? On today's show, Georgia picks up the top recruit in the country. What does that mean for their continued run of excellence? And don't bury Alabama just yet. The Saban dynasty not dead. We'll discuss. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And shout out to our everydayers jumping in with us. All right, we got to jump right into it as the big story of the day, really of the week, the rich getting richer. The number one ranked Georgia Bulldogs, the top ranked dogs. You know that team led by Kirby Smart, who just won the national championship, and the one before that as well. The team that's coming into this season looking for a three-peat. Well, he just got a commitment from the number one overall prospect in the 2024 recruiting class. Like I said, the rich get richer. Quarterback Dylan Raiola committed to Georgia on Monday. He is 6'3", 220 pounds, from Pinnacle High School in Phoenix, Arizona. He's the son of former NFL O-lineman Dominic Raiola, and he chose the Georgia Bulldogs over the likes of USC and Nebraska. Raiola said, "There is a culture and a standard that I was attracted to. The more time that went by, the stronger I felt about Georgia, and ultimately that led to this decision." Now, this is the second commitment for Raiola. He originally announced his commitment for Ohio State May of last year. That came over the likes of his dad's alma mater, Nebraska, as well as Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Notre Dame. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. At the time, that was a big pickup for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. But this past December, Raiola decommits from the Buckeyes, starts taking a bunch more visits and weighing his options. And when he decommitted, his dad said that Dylan was not going to make an announcement anytime soon. He was going to take his time, took visits to USC, to Nebraska, to Georgia. By the way, his uncle, Donovan Raiola, he's also a former lineman. He's on Matt Rule's staff at Nebraska, so maybe that's a factor why Nebraska's in here. And, of course, USC, it was trending that way towards USC. Like, look at Riley, look at his track record at Oklahoma and now at USC and what he's done with quarterbacks. Basically, every year, if you're the quarterback for Lincoln Riley, you got a pretty good chance to win the Heisman. And so in the end, it was Georgia that pulled him in. Raiola said, "I appreciate every coach that's invested in getting to know me and my family." By the way, as a junior, Raiola threw for over 2,400 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. His sophomore year, he threw for 3,300 yards, 32 touchdowns. He also has 11 rushing touchdowns over the past 2 years. Now, when we look around the landscape, Ohio State, they filled their spot when he decommitted. They picked up Air Noland. USC, they've got the number one quarterback in this past class, the 2023 class, in Malachi Nelson. Now, for Georgia, they did not sign a quarterback in the 2023 class. They brought in Gunnar Stockton in 2022, so a year ago. And now Gunnar Stockton is on the roster with Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff. Beck will be a senior once Raiola gets on campus, and Vandagriff will be a junior. So we'll see what happens here with, obviously the quarterback room at Georgia moving forward. But Raiola said Georgia's program is not based off one person or one position group. I'm committed to growing and developing as a person, as a student athlete. Excited to work with Coach Mike Bobo. It's pretty unique how this will come full circle. His uncle, Matthew Stafford, developed under Coach Mike Bobo during his time at Georgia. So with his announcement, Georgia now has 9 commitments for next season, including 2 5-stars in Dylan Raiola and cornerback Ellis Robinson. Georgia's already got one of the top recruiting classes. We know them in Alabama. I mean, they've been right there at the top these last couple of years, and they're doing it once again. One thing to note for Georgia's class, Ryan, I I think it's Pulisi, probably how you pronounce it, 4-star quarterback out of state of Connecticut. He's already a part of the 2024 class for Georgia. We'll see if he decommits and pulls out and goes somewhere else because, look, it's already a loaded quarterback room. Raiola's coming in next year. Pulisi's in that class as well. You got to think maybe he'll weigh his options and maybe head somewhere else. But a few other notes on Raiola. Aaron Murray, former Georgia quarterback, he weighed in on the move. He said, man, that quarterback room is going to be stacked next year. I think Carson Beck's good enough to go one and done. I think he's going to have a massive year, so he may be out of here after this year. But Gunnar Stockton, Brock Vandegrift, and now Dylan Raiola, he said, I don't think you can keep all three of those guys heading into the 2024 season. So big decisions coming up for all these young kids. But a massive get for Kirby Smart as he continues to dominate the recruiting world. It's a good day to be a damn good dog. Welcome to the family. So that was Aaron Murray talking about Dylan Raiola committing to Georgia. And again, Georgia going to have a lot of questions with the quarterback as they head into next year. But for now, they're pretty darn settled. And based on what we saw in the spring game, man, Carson Beck looks like the real deal. We made a future bet on him to win the Heisman this year. Encourage you guys to go do it. Some of the sports books got him at like plus 3,000 still, so you can still get in on Carson Beck Heisman chances. But one more note on Dylan Raiola on 3 Sports. This is from our buddy Matt Zenitz. He tweeted out, he said, anonymous SEC offensive coach on Dylan Raiola versus Arch Manning. He said, quote, in my opinion, Raiola has a higher ceiling than Arch. And again, from an anonymous SEC offensive coach, why does this matter? Well, when Dylan Raiola gets to Georgia, Texas and Arch Manning are going to be in the SEC with the Texas Longhorns by next year, 2024. So something worth watching. Look, everybody got gung-ho about Arch. You know, the term generational talent was thrown around. Obviously, we know his pedigree in the family, the bloodline coming from the Mannings. But look, Dylan Raiola is the number 1 recruit in the country for next year for a reason. The kid looks the part. We'll see if he can live up to the hype. But congrats to the Georgia Bulldogs. Big time get for them. And we'll see if he sticks through it. Again, a year ago at this time, Raiola had committed to Ohio State. They were all excited that he committed to them. But now here we are. He's heading into his senior season. Play this year out. We'll see if he stays committed to the Georgia Bulldogs. I got to think, though, Lincoln Riley and USC are not going to let him go that easily, especially if they have another great season again with, you know, another quarterback, Caleb Williams. If he repeats the Heisman, you're Dominic Raiola, how do you not consider maybe making a switch to USC? But again, what if Georgia goes for a three-peat, goes undefeated? Carson Beck has a fantastic year. Kind of can't lose either situation. I know winning the title would mean probably more at Georgia than, you know, winning a Heisman at USC and having 2-3 losses, not even one in the Pac-12. We'll see. But nonetheless, big-time get for the Georgia Bulldogs. And congrats to the Dog Nation out there. You guys keep this thing rolling. And some of the best talent continues to come to the SEC, no doubt about it. All right, let's jump back into this in just a second. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about Bama, where our buddy Josh Pate says, not so fast. Don't bury them just yet. Save your shovel. Hey, real quick, a message from our friends over at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and calories, you need to go grab the best tasting protein bar out there, and that is Built. You have to go try them if you're like me and you want to make some healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste. You need to go find Built Bars because they're healthy and they taste amazing. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. They come in some unbelievable flavors like the cookies and cream, the peanut butter brownie, the churro. Not sure how they do it, but they make them taste great. And they're only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar in there with a whopping 17 grams of protein packed in there. And you don't need to wait to get a box. You can go to Built.com and order them there and see all their different flavors. But you can also find them now locally. Your local Walmart or Sam's Club now stocks Built Bars. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. Again, Built.com, that's the website to go see what they got going on. And pretty sure you're going to like what they've got. This has been Locked On SEC, Built Bar. Long here, locked on SEC, and we still got a ton of stuff to get to. Look, we're in the off season. We'll be heading to SEC Media Days here in a couple weeks. We'll get some more content and gear up for another football season. But, man, there's no shortage of stuff to talk about, from the transfer portal to everything else. So let's jump back into it. Let's dive in, and let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Makes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we head over to Alabama as their football program announced on Monday that their homecoming game for 2023 is going to take place October 14th when they host the Arkansas Razorbacks. This will be Alabama's first home game of October next season. And look, Alabama normally wins and wins big on their homecoming nights. Crimson Tide have won 19 straight homecoming games. Last loss came in 2001 to LSU. Alabama's 87-13-1 in their homecoming games throughout their school history. Now, this game will be the first in a 3-week run of home games for Alabama. They'll host Arkansas, and it'll follow 2 straight away games in Starkville and College Station. But Tennessee, LSU, and Kentucky follow the Tide's game against the Hogs, and should be a good one. Look, Arkansas, KJ Jefferson back, Dan Enos now running the offense. You got to score points to beat Alabama. See what Arkansas looks like this year. Maybe could this be the year Arkansas puts up a good fight against the Crimson Tide. Now, Josh Pate, you guys know, does his college football show, does a tremendous job. We've had him on the show before. He said on a show this week that even though a lot of people are thinking that Alabama is maybe taking a step back without a proven quarterback right now, he said they can still win a national championship because they still got more talent than most anyone in the country. He said, look, Bama always operates on a full tank. They're always used to being so much more talented than everybody. In reality, they're going to out-talent most everybody they play still, even if you consider them down or vulnerable. They've got studs everywhere. This is what I've been saying. Like, the Tyler Buckner thing, you realize they bring him in. I'm still of the mindset that Ty Simpson or Jalen Milroe is going to win that job. And, yeah, we're trying to hold him to the standard of can he be the next Bryce Young? Can he be the next Mac Jones? Can he be the next Tua? But for Bama, like, okay, maybe say it's Jalen Milroe. He doesn't have to be those guys. Obviously, he's a tremendous runner. His legs are great. But if he throws for 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, fumbles the ball, but Bama's surrounding talent steps up, the running backs all run all over the place, the defense is getting after it, 1 million sacks, Bama's going to be just fine. Again, the number 1 recruiting class in the country this past cycle was Alabama. Nick Saban signed 9 recruits that were labeled 5-star prospects. Josh Pate went on to say, so look, Alabama's ridiculously loaded. They've got them all over the place, just not at quarterback. What that can do to a team, and I'm sure Nick Saban's gunning for this, is it can convince them that their tank's a lot closer to empty than it really is. And if you get an Alabama team that's convinced it's running on empty, Alabama could make a great season out of it. That team right there can win a national championship year. Don't kid yourself. There's no program out there that is complete. So that was Josh Pate talking about Alabama. Quick note on Bama, their former tight end Elijah Brown, he entered the transfer portal a month ago. He is committed to Florida Atlantic. He was the last Alabama player left in the transfer portal after the spring. So he's going to go down there and play for quarterback Casey Thompson and head coach Tom Herman. How about that? In other SEC news, or Mississippi State, their second leading tackler, linebacker Nathaniel Watson, he was arrested on Sunday morning on suspicion of driving under the influence. The Clarion Ledger reported the arrest. He was booked at 1:30 in the morning. Zach Arnett released a statement, said, "We're aware of the matter, continue to gather information. We do not have further comment at this time." Watson made some big plays for Mississippi State over the years. Had an interception last year. He returned 51 yards against Arizona, had a strip sack in the end zone against A&M, had a career high 17 tackles against Kentucky. He was second on Mississippi State's team in tackles last year with 114. That was also second in the SEC. And he's entering his sixth season at Mississippi State and his last season. So we will see if he receives any punishment or anything like that. Him and linebacker Jed Johnson, they combined for almost 400 total tackles over the past 2 years. So, man, just a boneheaded mistake by a guy that's supposed to be one of your leaders, and you hope that this doesn't interfere with his future or whatnot. But he was one of the players that went Mississippi State, represented the school at SEC Media Days last summer. So, man, you just wonder, if this is going to hurt Mississippi State. We'll see what happens, and is it internal discipline or what? We will find out. All right, other news over Kentucky. Cutter Boley, a hell of a quarterback name. He will announce his college destination this week. Thursday at 11 a.m. this week, Cutter Boley will make his announcement. He is a Lexington native, big-time Kentucky target for the class of 2025. He announced his top 10 schools earlier this week. He's still considering Alabama, Tennessee, Oregon, Michigan, TCU, Miami, Notre Dame, among others. He attends Lexington Christian Academy, 6'5", 200 pounds, rated as the number 72 overall player and the number 6 quarterback in the class of 2025. So this isn't for this upcoming class. This is for 2 years from now. If Kentucky gets him, obviously he'll be their first commitment for the class of 2025, and it would be a big one. In other SEC news, man, it's kind of interesting when you look at the meetings coming up in Destin and what exactly is going to happen with the scheduling, the future for the SEC. But Paul Feinbaum, appearing on Jocks FM on Monday, he talked about where the SEC stands in going to a possible 9-game conference schedule. He said, look, I've heard certain presidents oppose moving to 9 games, but we'll do it because they understand, here's a greater good lining coming in, that you need to make it work. Because as we shift to the playoff for the teams on top, that extra conference game is probably not going to be a big deal. It's the middle and the bottom of the league that will be affected by it. And if you're an ascending team and you're trying to get out of the basement, you need an extra win and get to a bowl game to lift you off for the next season. You don't need Alabama showing up on your schedule as your 9th game, or Georgia, or trip to Baton Rouge, or Auburn. So that was Paul Feinbaum talking about it. He said he believes the SEC leaders are going to move to 9 games, and that'll get it done. And he said he also realized it's the middle of May, and the issue is still not yet decided. They need to come to a decision very soon on this, because we're talking next year, and Texas and Oklahoma are coming. They want to get an idea of who they're playing, how's the schedule going to work. A lot of fan bases want to start making travel plans, all that kind of stuff. So we expect to hear some news on this here in the next 2 to 3 weeks and get a finalization on the 2024 SEC scheduling. One other note on the future of conferences and whatnot, 7 ACC schools are reportedly looking into the conference's grant of rights agreement that binds member schools to a media rights deal through 2036. Ross Dellinger over at Sports Illustrated describes the teams as investigating to see if the agreement is truly unbreakable. He wrote that Clemson and Florida State are leading this group, and it includes Miami, North Carolina, NC State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. Basically, officials from the 7 schools have met a handful of times over the last few months with their lawyers examining the deal to see if they can get out of it. The ACC would be owed $120 million for any school to exit the conference early. Under the grant of rights, the ACC would still own a team's broadcasting rights for home games through 2036, even if the school paid the 9-figure exit fee. So as you can see, man, the future of college football is very much in flux. And you got a lot of these teams are looking and wondering, can we get out of this? What if the power conferences form in other places? Buckle your seatbelt. This is going to be a rocky, rocky road for other conferences, not for the SEC, but for those other conferences who all, aren't as fortunate being in the Southeastern Conference. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, CBS Sports naming an SEC team as a dark horse contender. We'll tell you who that is coming up in just a sec. Roll along here, Locked On SEC. Again, thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Just a couple more tidbits we want to get to before we call it a show. So we're going to dive back into it here in just a second. But CBS Sports has put out a piece naming their college football playoff dark horse contenders from each conference. Plus, they named some long shots for the 2023 season. And the team that they put as their dark horse from the SEC, it's the Auburn Tigers. And here's what they write at CBS Sports. They say, this is certainly the big name school that pops out on the dark horse list. Auburn hired Hugh Freeze to turn things around fast. And whether it's Peyton Thorne or Robbie Ashford under center this year, the Auburn Tigers might have the right quarterback, but can they become excellent in a hurry? It'll be tough considering the SEC West is arguably the toughest division in the sport. But Auburn could be a team that, again, we're talking long shot, dark horse contender, not the craziest. If I told you right now Auburn's going to win 10 games this year, I mean, you'd say, I don't think that's going to happen, but it wouldn't be the craziest thing you hear. By the way, some other long shots they threw out there. Remember TCU? You know, they come out of nowhere last year. They get to the national championship game. So kind of some teams they threw in the hat. They said, what about Colorado? Deion Sanders been there crushing it in the transfer portal, pulling a bunch of SEC guys, honestly, up there. Iowa State is the team they threw out there, UTSA. So just some interesting teams that they threw out there as some long shots. Now, one other article that I was reading today, 24/7 Sports, they put out a piece naming college football. They use the college football preseason rankings and all the hype, and they named 2023's most overrated and underrated teams. And how about for overrated? They got Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels. Their average preseason ranking is number 21. And here's what they write at 24/7 Sports. They say Ole Miss took a step back down the stretch during last season's spiral. But this time around, the Rebels slate is treacherous from the get-go. After going to nationally ranked Tulane in week 2, Ole Miss will contend with Alabama on the road in its SEC opener 2 weeks later, then host LSU in the league's home opener. That's 3 potential losses in September for Lane Kiffin. Not only would that put Ole Miss outside of the national rankings, but it would be an uphill climb to get back there the rest of the way to justify preseason billing. It's not going to happen. So, man, 24/7 Sports, not believers in Ole Miss. They think they're a little bit overrated this year. And how about from the SEC, who do they have underrated? Kind of goes with the theme of last segment if you were listening. It's the Alabama Crimson Tide. Average preseason ranking is number 5. And they write, when has Nick Saban's team ever been ranked outside of the top 3 cumulatively at this point of the offseason? For the most part, the Crimson Tide haven't even been mentioned among the playoff frontrunners like Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan, and it's all because of their quarterback spot. Notre Dame's Tyler Buchner is Alabama's most important transfer this offseason, and his progression in August once he arrives on campus is something to watch. Considering Alabama's preseason hype is at a Saban-era low right now, this gives the Crimson Tide the underrated label heading into 2023. Look, I mean, your preseason top 5. It's not like you're sneaking up on anybody, but I said at times last fall during Alabama's 10-2 finish, it seemed the Crimson Tide lacked their usual toughness and aggression that we've become so accustomed with during the Saban era. They're getting back to that, it seems, with this 2023 group. Saban said after the A-Day game last month, I like this team's toughness. I think they're physical and they play hard. We don't have a bunch of guys that are soft or looking for an easy way. They try to please the coaches. They try to play with intensity. I think we have better practice habits than we've had in the past. And I think that mentality gets developed in the offensive line, the defensive line, on special teams. And I think we have some guys that are trying to step up and do that. So, look, from Saban's mouth, we will see if this team is more physical and willing to do what it takes to get after it. It's just it's a scary thought that Alabama may not even be great at quarterback, but if they're great everywhere else, they're winning a lot of games, and they may factor into this championship hunt before it's all said and done. There you have it. That is the latest stuff going on around the conference. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. For our everydayers later in this week and on the show. We're going to have some great conversation. We already told you we're going to talk with our buddy Eric Kane, who covers the Tennessee Volunteers. We'll do a little crossover episode with him and some other big guests planned along the way throughout this week and next. So you don't want to miss it. Make sure you subscribe. Checking us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.